Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into the life and legacy of Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj, a figure who often finds himself in the shadow of his legendary father, Shivaji Maharaj. But trust me, his story is just as captivating, full of drama, intrigue, and military brilliance.
Absolutely. And I think what makes Sanhaji's story so compelling is that he faced challenges that would have crippled most rulers. Imagine inheriting a kingdom already locked in a deadly struggle with the Mughal Empire, led by none other than Aurangzeb, one of the most powerful emperors in Indian history.
Talk about pressure. So let's set the scene. 17th century India, the Mughal Empire is expanding its reach, and the Maratha Empire, founded by Shivaji, is directly in its path. Where does Sambhaji fit into all of this?
Well, he was born in 1657, right in the thick of things. His childhood was anything but peaceful, with constant threats from neighboring kingdoms and the ever-present Mughal looming large.
I bet his upbringing was pretty intense, considering the circumstances.
It was. He received rigorous training in statecraft, military strategy, diplomacy, you name it. His father, Shivaji, understood that his son would need to be prepared for a life of leadership and conflict.
Makes sense. But I read that Sambhaji's relationship with his stepmother and half-brother was pretty strained. Did that family dynamic play a role in his later life, in his leadership?
It definitely added a layer of complexity. There were factions within the court who favored his half-brother as successor, so even before becoming king, Sambhaji was navigating a web of political intrigue and rivalry.
So Shivaji Maharaj passes away in 1680, and Sambhaji ascends to the throne. What's the state of the Maratha Empire at this point? What's on his plate as the new king?
To put it bluntly, he inherits a kingdom teetering on the edge of a volcano. You've got internal divisions simmering beneath the surface, and then there's the Mughal emperor, Aurangzeb, who's basically camped out in Aurangabad, making it crystal clear that he intends to crush the Maratha Empire once and for all.
Whoa, talk about a hostile welcome. So how does Sambhaji respond to this seemingly insurmountable challenge?
He doesn't back down, that's for sure. But he's also smart enough to know that he can't go toe-to-toe with the vast Mughal army in a conventional war. He has to play a different game.
So what's his strategy? Does he continue his father's legacy of guerrilla warfare?
Oh, he takes it to a whole new level. Sambhaji becomes a master of lightning raids, hitting the Mughals hard and fast, then disappearing back into the rugged terrain of the Deccan. He disrupts their supply lines, keeps them constantly on edge, and basically makes their lives a living hell.
So he's not just reacting to the Mughal threat, he's actively taking the fight to them, but in a way that plays to the Maratha's strengths. Were there any particular campaigns or battles that stand out as examples of this strategy in action?
Oh, absolutely. In 1682, Sambhaji pulls off a stunning victory at the Battle of Bhupalgarh. But what's even more impressive is his strategic thinking. He launches daring raids deep into Mughal territory, targeting key cities like Bijapur and Golconda, which were vital for the Mughal supply chain.
Wow, that's bold. It sounds incredibly risky, though. How did he manage to pull off these deep strikes into enemy territory?
Well, first, Sambhaji was a master of intelligence gathering. He had a network of informants within Mughal ranks, giving him crucial information about troop movements, supply routes, you name it. He was also a brilliant tactician, exploiting the terrain to his advantage, using the element of surprise to maximize the impact of his smaller, more mobile forces.
So we're seeing a leader who's not just brave and skilled in warfare, but also incredibly strategic and cunning.
Exactly. And it's this combination of qualities that allows him to hold his own against the Mughal war machine for a significant period of time. And there's another aspect of his leadership that's often overlooked, his focus on naval power.
Oh, yes. You mentioned this earlier. Now, I know Shivaji Maharaj also placed importance on developing a Maratha navy, but was there something unique about Sambhaji's approach?
There is. While his father viewed the Navy mainly as a defensive force, Sambhaji saw its potential for offensive action. He wasn't just content with protecting the coastline. He wanted to project Maratha power across the seas.
So he's thinking bigger, expanding the scope of the Maratha Empire beyond land-based campaigns. Did this more ambitious naval strategy pay off? Did he have any significant victories at sea?
He did. He successfully thwarted attempts by the Portuguese and the British to gain control of vital ports. That was huge. By securing the coastline and dominating maritime trade routes, Sambhaji ensures the economic vitality of his empire, even while facing the Mughal behemoth on land.
It's remarkable, really, to be facing a relentless enemy on land while also checking the ambitions of European powers at sea. It's mind-boggling. But sadly, we know that things ultimately take a dark turn for Sambhaji. What were the circumstances that led to his downfall?
That's where the story takes a turn toward tragedy, a stark reminder that even the most brilliant strategists can be undone by forces beyond their control. And in Sambhaji's case, that force was betrayal.
Betrayal. It's a word that sends shivers down your spine, especially when you're talking about someone in a position of power like Sambhaji. So who betrayed him and why?
Well, the name that's gone down in infamy is Kavi Kailash. He was one of Sambhaji's trusted commanders, someone he relied on. In 1689, Aurangzeb launches a massive siege on Raigad, the Maratha capital, and it's during this siege that Kavi Kailash switches sides.
So, right when Sambhaji needs his most trusted allies the most, he gets stabbed in the back. Brutal. What were Kavi Kailash's motives? Do we know why he did it?
It's still a subject of debate among historians. Some believe he was bribed by the Mughals, others suggest personal grudges, or maybe even political ambitions that were at odds with Sambhaji's vision. But whatever the reason, the consequences were catastrophic.
I can only imagine the sense of shock, the feeling of being utterly betrayed by someone you thought was loyal. It must have been devastating for Sambhaji, both personally and strategically.
It was, and the consequences were swift and brutal. Sambhaji's capture opens the door for Aurangzeb to deliver a crushing blow to the Maratha Empire.
Knowing Aurangzeb's reputation for ruthlessness, I have a bad feeling about this. What happened to Sambhaji after he was captured?
Well, to put it mildly, Aurangzeb didn't exactly roll out the red carpet. Sambhaji was subjected to horrific torture, the kind that makes you shudder to even think about. Aurangzeb was desperate to extract information, secrets that could help him dismantle the Maratha resistance once and for all.
It's unimaginable, the pain and suffering he must have endured. Did he break? Did he give Aurangzeb what he wanted?
No. Sambhaji refused to crack. He remained defiant, even in the face of unimaginable agony. He protected his people, his kingdom to the very end.
Wow. That's a testament to his strength of will, his loyalty to his people. It's almost superhuman to withstand that level of torture and not give in.
It is. It speaks volumes about his character. But sadly, his ordeal wasn't over. On March 11th, 1689, Aurangzeb orders his public execution.
Oh, man, that's just heartbreaking. To go through all of that only to be publicly executed. It must have felt like the end of everything for the Maratha people.
You would think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But that's the amazing thing about Sambhaji's story. His death, tragic as it was, didn't crush the Maratha spirit. It did the opposite. It ignited a firestorm of resistance, a burning desire for vengeance and freedom that would ultimately consume Aurangzeb and his empire.
So even in death, Sambhaji becomes a symbol, a rallying point for the Marathas.
Exactly. His martyrdom galvanizes the Maratha people. They've seen their king, who embodied defiance against Mughal oppression, tortured and killed. It's no longer just a fight for land or power. It becomes a fight for their very survival, their identity, their right to exist.
So who picks up the mantle after Sambhaji?
Yeah.
Who leads the Marathas through this incredibly dark period?
His brother Rajaram Maharaj steps into the leadership role. And he has a monumental task ahead of him. The Mughals are on the offensive, the Maratha Empire is reeling from the loss of their king, and there's a sense of urgency to keep the flame of resistance burning.
It sounds like a near impossible situation. So how does Rajaram, with all of this on his shoulders, approach this challenge? Does he try to go toe-to-toe with the Mughals, or does he adopt a different strategy?
Rajaram understands that a direct confrontation with the Mughal army would be suicidal at this point. He has to be more strategic, more adaptable. He focuses on keeping the resistance alive, evading the Mughals, constantly moving his base of operations, playing a deadly game of cat and mouse.
It sounds exhausting and incredibly dangerous, but it also sounds like a continuation of Sambhaji's guerrilla warfare tactics, albeit on a larger scale. Did Rajaram manage to achieve any significant victories against the Mughals while he was on the run?
Well, he doesn't have any huge, decisive battles like Sambhaji's victory at Bhupalgarh, but his role is absolutely critical. Rajaram keeps the Maratha dream alive. He prevents the Mughals from delivering a knockout blow, constantly harassing their forces, disrupting their supply lines, making it increasingly difficult and costly for Aurangzeb to maintain his campaign in the Deccan.
So it's a war of attrition, basically, wearing down the enemy, making it too painful for them to continue the fight. But it's also buying time for the Marathas to recover, to regroup, to plan their next move. Was this shift in strategy from the more aggressive style of Sambhaji to this more evasive, resilient approach under Rajaram a key factor in the Marathas' eventual resurgence?
It was. It shows a crucial adaptation to the circumstances. Survival depended on flexibility and resilience. And the strategic shift, really lays the groundwork for the rise of the Peshwas, who would ultimately lead the Maratha Empire to its greatest heights.
Ah, yes, the Peshwas, they were, if I'm remembering correctly, kind of like the prime ministers, the real power behind the throne, especially during times of crisis. How did they manage to turn the tide against the Mughal Empire?
Well, the Peshwas were a remarkable bunch. They were brilliant military commanders, shrewd politicians, and deeply connected to the heart and soul of the Maratha people. They built on the foundation laid by Shivaji and Sambhaji. They refined the guerrilla warfare tactics, established a more organized administrative structure, and even forged alliances with other powers who were also feeling the squeeze from the Mughals.
So they're not just warriors, they're also diplomats, administrators, nation builders. They understand that to defeat a power like the Mughals, they have to be more than just a band of rebels. They need unity, a shared vision, a well-oiled machine.
You got it. And the Peshwas provide that vision. Under their leadership, the Maratha Empire doesn't just survive, it thrives. They expand their territory, they push back against the Mughals, and they eventually establish a vast empire that spans a huge chunk of India.
It's really a testament to the enduring spirit of the Maratha people. They face seemingly impossible odds, suffer devastating losses, yet they never give up. It makes you wonder, looking back, was Sambhaji's sacrifice, his martyrdom, the pivotal moment, the spark that ignited this incredible resurgence? Or were there other factors at play?
It's always tricky to pin down a single event as the turning point in history. But there's no doubt that Sambhaji's death had a profound psychological impact on the Marathas. It deepened their resolve, fueled their anger against the Mughals, and gave them a powerful symbol to rally behind.
So even though his reign was marked by impressive military achievements, it's his tragic death that cements his legacy as a symbol of resistance, the catalyst for the Maratha resurgence. It's almost like a reminder that sometimes, even in defeat, a leader can inspire a movement that ultimately achieves victory.
And that's what makes studying history so fascinating. It's not always a neat and tidy story. There are twists and turns, unexpected consequences, and figures like Sambhaji who defy easy categorization.
We've talked a lot about Sambhaji's military genius, his tragic end, and the impact his death had on the Maratha people. But there's another aspect of his story that often gets overlooked, maybe even misrepresented, and that's his leadership style, particularly when compared to his father, the legendary Shivaji Maharaj.
Yeah, it's interesting. Every historical figure who makes a mark, especially one who achieves greatness like Shivaji Maharaj, seems to face endless comparisons and scrutiny. What are some of the criticisms leveled at Sambhaji's leadership? How does he measure up against his father?
Well, some historians argue that Sambhaji was, perhaps, a bit impulsive, too quick to rely on military solutions. They say he lacked the diplomatic finesse that Shivaji was known for.
So a brilliant military mind, but maybe not as skilled in the art of negotiation and diplomacy. But I wonder, given the constant threat from the Mughals, wouldn't a more assertive militaristic approach be necessary? I mean, both Shivaji and Sambhaji were basically fighting for survival against a much larger, more powerful enemy.
That's a good point. It's important to consider the context. Sambhaji didn't have the luxury of time or a peaceful environment to hone his diplomatic skills. He was constantly on the defensive, facing an enemy that was determined to wipe out the Maratha Empire.
It seems a bit unfair to judge him solely on his perceived shortcomings without acknowledging the immense pressure he was under. Are there any aspects of Sambhaji's rule beyond his military accomplishments that tend to get overlooked or maybe even distorted over time?
One area that deserves more attention is his intellectual and cultural contributions. Sambhaji was a scholar, a poet, a patron of the arts. He wrote several books on a range of subjects: military strategy, political philosophy, even erotic literature.
Wow, that's pretty diverse. It sounds like he was a man of many talents, not just a warrior king. Do his writings offer any insights into his leadership style, his vision for the Maratha Empire?
They do. You can see a deep understanding of statecraft, a strong belief in Maratha identity. He really championed the concept of Swaraja, which means self-rule. It was a core principle for Shivaji as well, and it became a driving force for the Maratha Empire for generations to come.
So despite the criticisms, it's clear that Sambhaji was deeply committed to the idea of an independent Maratha state, free from outside control. His writings give us a glimpse into his mind, his aspirations for his people. It's inspiring to see that even in the midst of constant warfare, he was also thinking about the intellectual and cultural life of his kingdom.
Absolutely. It shows a multifaceted character, a leader who cared about the well-being of his people in a holistic sense, not just their military defense. And while the debate over whether he was a better ruler than his father might never truly be settled, There's no denying Sambhaji's impact on the Maratha Empire's journey to greatness.
The Sambhaji story is definitely full of contrasts. Military brilliance, political intrigue, intellectual pursuits, and ultimately a tragic martyrdom that sets in motion a chain of events that leads to the Maratha resurgence. It's a story that reminds us that history is rarely simple or straightforward.
It's a story that makes you think, that challenges you to look beyond the surface, to consider the complexities of leadership and the burdens of responsibility. And it's a story that highlights the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit when faced with seemingly insurmountable odds.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the life and legacy of Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj, we're left with a sense of awe at his courage, his intellect, and his unwavering devotion to his people. He might not be as famous as his father, but his story is just as captivating, just as important in understanding the rise of the Maratha Empire.
And for our listeners, remember that Sambhaji's story is just one thread in the incredibly rich tapestry of history. We encourage you to keep exploring, to dig deeper into the sources, to examine different perspectives, and to come to your own conclusions about this fascinating period in Indian history.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked your curiosity and given you a new appreciation for this remarkable figure. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deep.